This is John from FlatCatGear, and today we're going to talk about canister top stoves. These are very simple devices. Simply, it's a stove you screw mount directly onto a fuel canister. You light it off, you're good to go. And as you can see, there's a whole variety of different canister top stoves. So some of the cheaper ones are small, tiny BRS 3000. It's about $17. Sometimes you get it for cheaper than that. You got some very high-end ones. This is the PocketRocket Deluxe. Excellent simmer control and such. Now, these are very common in the backpacking field because they're simple, they're cheap, they're small. The biggest problem that you have is if you take a look at it, here's a good picture example, is that these stoves are open to the environment. Now, canister top stoves can be very simple, like that BRS 3000T, or they can be fully integrated. So a good example of that is a jet boil system. Marvelous system, very fuel efficient, integrated stove designed into the pot, very fast, very efficient. A little bit more on the expensive side, but also a much bigger volume. And in fact, if you take a look at a jet boil, price-wise, yeah, it's pretty comparable, but weight-wise, it's about double the weight of a typical canister stove and a small 750 milliliter mug. It's also about twice the volume. So there are great things about canister top stoves. The biggest problem is the ability for the wind to affect fuel efficiency. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about fuel efficiency. Why is fuel efficiency so important? Again, on a weekend trip, there's more than enough gas in here to last a single person for a weekend trip. Now, a weekend trip with two people, you're probably going to use twice as much gas, and that's when it starts becoming critical. Additionally, as you go for longer days, the system becomes more sensitive. And if your stove is sensitive to the environment, what you may find is you're using more fuel than you had planned on using. Now, fuel canisters come in quantized sizes. You can get them, basically you can get them at 4, 8, and 16 ounces. And so one of the things about fuel efficiency, it comes down to planning. How many of these canisters do you need to bring with you? And that's where fuel efficiency starts to become important, because in many cases you need to understand how much fuel you're using, which means that you have to be able to predict or control the environment, and then you have to plan for excess fuel. So here's a chart that gives you an example. Is if your fuel rate was on the normal range, that you can almost go to a 7-day trip on a single canister. But if you go in harsh conditions where it's windy or cold, with no wind protection anyway, you may end up having to bring 3 canisters. That is where fuel efficiency becomes important. It becomes important when you start talking about pack weight and pack volume. Now, addition to that is if you're cooking for more than one person, then again, fuel efficiency becomes more critical. Or if you're in cold weather where you want warm drinks, you're going to be burning more fuel, you have to be able to figure out the fuel efficiency. Again, the key is for the fuel efficiency is in planning, knowing how much fuel you need to take on your trip. This has been a classic problem, and there are some solutions out there already. So the Snow Peak Gigapower has a partial windscreen that goes around the stove. You can buy that. And who is it? Optimus has a clip-on windscreen, and so the clip-on windscreen snaps to the base here, and it covers a half windscreen. Now, it doesn't necessarily work with all stoves, but there's a solution out there. And finally, the most common solution is when you have a canister top stove, is to use a partial windscreen, maybe a 3/4 windscreen that reaches down to the ground. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't actually pack up that small. So it's a big windscreen. So that's why we developed the Ocelot Windscreen. In doing a lot of our tests in developing the windscreen, we found out we really only need to protect a zone that's maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches high. All you have to do is block enough wind to keep the flame in contact with the bottom of the pot. And so we've developed the Ocelot Windscreen. So we found that the most common users of canister top stoves were mug users. So when we did our experiments, we found that we only needed a windscreen that was maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches tall, but a full wrap. And so that is the Ocelot windscreen, and that gives you enough protection from the wind to keep your fuel efficiency high. We also designed it such that with all our equipment that the Ocelot system will nest inside your mug. And if you have a something like the Snow Peak 750 or other 750 milliliter mugs, the entire windscreen as well as the fuel canister will nest inside the pot. With a lot of the stove specs, everybody's working for speed. How fast can you get 2 cups of water to boil? We don't care about speed, we care about fuel efficiency. And so what you'll find is that optimal fuel efficiency when using the Ocelot windscreen is when you power your stove to 1/3 to maybe half of full power. You'll still get a 2-cup boil in 4 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, but the focus of what we're trying to do is save fuel. So we recommend that you run the Ocelot system between 1/3 and half of full power. Right now, we are supporting the BRS 3000T. We're supporting the PocketRocket, both the PocketRocket 2 and the PocketRocket Deluxe. We will be supporting the PocketRocket Original and the Soto Amicus. So come visit us at www.FlatCatGear.com.